Hello and welcome to this special edition of Africa Today, where we are going to be talking about the occasion of the 46th anniversary of the October War victory. And with us over the phone is Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, political analyst. Good afternoon, Dr. Raouf.
Good afternoon, my dear.
Dr. Raouf, how do you see the Egyptians still having pride in this great victory, and as they are celebrating the 46th anniversary of the October War?
Well, I mean, October War marked something extremely important in the history of Egypt. I mean, this is, in my opinion, the most important victory and event that happened in the modern history of Egypt. Of course, it needs to be celebrated, and mind you, it has not taken really the homage, and the real salute it deserves. I mean, we should give it more importance. We should speak about it more often. We should make movies about it, because this is something that happens once every. Hopefully, it never happens again. But again, this kind of war, they take place once every century, and our sweeping victory deserves that we celebrate it, and of course we pray for the souls of our martyrs, and we give homage to whoever took part of this excellent victory.
Right. Well, sir, on the occasion of the 46th anniversary of the October War victory, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi addressed the nation on Sunday. How do you see the most important points that came in the president's address?
Well, I mean, it was a very nice speech. Again, he saluted the souls of the martyrs and everybody who took part. He mentioned that the victory was only achieved because of the will of the Egyptian people, and this is the will that will, construct the Egypt of the future. He said that we have to learn from our victory lessons and to apply for our future. I mean, he spoke very beautifully about it, and as I said, I think we should give it more and more importance, in my opinion. Yes.
Right. Well, sir, also in his word yesterday, President Sisi said that Egyptians on that day crossed the line between despair and hope, and that between the past and the future. Would you please tell us more about the morale of the people after the 1967 and how they succeeded in turning this into a victory?
I can call it a full-size miracle. I mean, after the unfortunate events of 1967, everybody was down. The morale of the people was terrible. The general spirit of the nation was very down. And thanks to the efforts that were done at this time, everybody join hands, the whole Egyptian people, not only the army, but the army and what we call the internal front. We were all one person. I mean, I'm saying we because I was at the time living and witnessed, and we started rebuilding our army, and we started rebuilding our internal front, and we managed within a record period of 7 years to, or even 6 years, not even 7, to rearm ourselves with the will, with the spirit, and we managed to succeed and achieve this sweeping victory in one of the, very important epics in our modern history. And as I said, this is a lesson. We should never give up. We should never lose hope, and there is always a point where we can start and achieve what we want, as long as we have the will and determination to do it. And this is exactly what we have what we have done through the period between the two wars, and that is why we achieved the success and the victory in the war and started building our country.
Right. Dr. Raouf, the October War victory was a great decision taken by late President Muhammad Anwar Sadat. How do you see the preparations since the 1967 war, and would you please tell us more on the state of preparation before the war?
First of all, one has to give the highest credit to our late President Sadat. He had a vision. He knew what he was doing, and he prepared the country for the war, and he achieved the, again, in my opinion, the most important camouflage plan in the history. I mean, he convinced everybody that we are not going to war and that we are accepting the status quo, and so everybody was relaxed. Nobody thought that we are going to war. First of all, he let the Russian experts go home, and then once again he opened the vacations and holidays for the army officers just before the war, pilgrimage, etc. before the war, but behind the curtains, he was preparing the country for war, preparing the provisions for the war. I mean, a huge camouflage plan was achieved, and an ingenious, of course, plan for the war itself. And he realized that the Egyptians will not stand a long term war, because the United States will intervene sooner or later. So he had a very defined objective, just to cross the canal and occupy our land back, and then I mean, increase our negotiation situation and power, and this is exactly what we did, and started his trek for peace, which he achieved very successfully over the next year.
Right, Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, our political analyst, many thanks for your insights, sir. And dear viewers, moving on to our special reports, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi laid a wreath of the Unknown Soldier Memorial on the 46th anniversary of the October War victory. We have more details in the following report.
Marking the 46th anniversary of the 6th of October victory, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi laid a wreath of flowers at the memorial of the unknown soldier. President el-Sisi was received at the memorial by Minister of Defense Mohammed Zaki, Armed Forces Chief of Staff Mohammed Farid, and a number of ministers and state officials. Also marking the occasion, the President laid a wreath on the tomb of late President Anwar Sadat, who led the 1973 October War for the liberation of Sinai. He paid respect to the late President and met members of his family. The President also laid a wreath on the tomb of late President Gamal Abdel Nasser in Al Qubba Palace. After the ceremony, the President headed a meeting of the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces. During the meeting, the President congratulated the Egyptian people and the armed forces on the occasion of the 46th anniversary of the 6th of October War victory. The meeting also covered a number of issues related to the activities and duties of the armed forces, including the war on terrorism, in cooperation with all relevant state institutions. Egypt's victory in the 6th of October War in 1973 is a turning point in the nation's history.
Welcome back. On the 6th of October 1973 war, 220 Egyptian aircrafts crossed Suez Canal at low height to bombard Israel targets in Sinai. The strikes achieved its targets successfully, and Egypt regained its precious land, Sinai. Details follow.
46 years ago, the Egyptian and the Syrian armies launched a surprise attack on Israeli positions on the southern and eastern fronts, namely in Sinai and on the Golan Heights. At 1400 hours Saturday, 6 October, 200 bombers flew over the Suez Canal en route to destroy Israeli positions deep in Sinai, while 4,000 pieces of the Egyptian field artillery blew away the fortifications that Israel has built along the eastern bank of the canal to prevent the Egyptian army from launching an all-out attack to regain Sinai from Israeli occupation. In order to deter Egypt from crossing the canal, the Israeli built the Bar-Lev from north to south with a sand dam and fortifications and napalm tubes under the water to put the waterway of the canal on fire in case the Egyptian forces would attempt to cross. A former Israeli chief of staff had bragged that even a nuclear bomb would not destroy this defense line. The whole idea of this defense line was to deter Egypt's high command from contemplating breaching the canal and taking the fortifications on the eastern bank by force. The war was the only option available to Egypt and other Arab countries to liberate their territories from Israeli occupation, as all the diplomatic attempts that would set in motion a process whereby Egypt would regain control of Sinai in return for ending the state of war with Israel and ultimately the signing of a peace treaty between the two countries had failed. In less than 10 days, the United States flew in almost 22,000 tons of armaments, munitions and 80 planes, half of which were Phantom fighter planes. Thus, the Egyptian army was fighting both Israel and the United States at the same time. Strategically speaking, the war proved that Arab armies were prepared and ready to wage modern wars, that they could fight Israel for days on end while not only keeping their ground, but also scoring victories. The October War has proven that with sophisticated weapon systems and well-organized and well-trained armies, Arab countries were capable of inflicting heavy losses on Israeli forces as well as the economy of the Israeli state.
Welcome back. Planning Minister Hala Said said that the African investments in Egypt are worth $2.8 billion and Egypt's investments in Africa are worth $10.2 billion, with $1.2 billion of the amount added in 2018. Details follow.
Planning Ministry said that the African investments in Egypt are worth $2.8 billion and Egypt's investments in Africa are worth $10.2 billion, with $1.2 billion of that amount added in 2018. The ministry said that Egypt is eager to cooperate effectively with African partners in various developmental and economic areas as part of the African Union's Agenda 2063, especially given that Egypt is the AU's current chair. It added that the Central Bank of Egypt is making significant efforts through its presidency of the Association of African Central Banks and is seeking to establish an African Central Bank and a fund to boost banking and financial stability in Africa. According to the ministry, it is also working on supporting investment and development alongside Egyptian banks, which have begun to work in African markets to maximize trade exchange, support exports and imports, and provide required funds for joint trade and investment. It said that Egypt supports the efforts to implement a number of infrastructure projects to achieve African regional integration, including the Cairo-Cape Town Road, which will increase the trade flow between African countries, the electronic linkage of African stock markets to enhance joint cooperation and exchange of experiences, and the establishment of an African Central Bank. On healthcare, it asserted that Egypt is seeking to mainstream its experiences in African countries, especially its 100 Million Health Initiative. In this regard, Egypt is to host a roundtable that will be organized by the African Association for Public Administration and Management in December, with the purpose of enhancing dialogue and exchanging experiences in the administrative reform sector.
And with that last report on African investments in Egypt, we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more coming up on Nile TV International.